I was confronted with a gut-wrenching, unfiltered revelation from my toxic mother-in-law, a message so harsh it shattered every hope of being accepted as part of the family. Just moments before our eagerly anticipated vacation, she coldly announced that, in her eyes, I was not family. In that instant, my husband and I made a swift, painful decision. We abandoned them at the airport and embarked on our own journey. Before I share every intricate detail of this turbulent saga, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and share this video to support my channel and help spread these honest, hard-hitting stories. A few days ago, as we prepared to leave for our annual family vacation, a long-standing tradition in which my husband's relatives gather to choose an exciting destination and take a week off from their daily routines, we were filled with mixed emotions. This cherished ritual, where every year the in-laws unite to travel together and reconnect, had always been a significant event in their lives. My husband, who is 30, and I, a 30-year-old woman, had only recently been married after 3 years of being together, and I was excited to finally be a part of this celebration. During our engagement, my husband had once asked me to join him on such a trip, but I hesitated and declined because his family had not extended a formal invitation at that time, a slight that left me feeling awkward and out of place. This year, however, my mother-in-law Sandra, whose demeanor toward me had always been frosty and distant, invited me along, a gesture that, despite its outward appearance, only deepened my suspicion that she had never truly welcomed me into the fold. Looking back, it's evident that the shift in Sandra's behavior began when my husband chose to move out of his family home and live with me. Up until that point, her attitude had been lukewarm at best, but once we started our independent life together, her warmth evaporated and was replaced by a growing coldness and even outright meanness. It seemed as though she resented me for being the catalyst that led her son away from the family nest, a decision I had made long ago, as I have always prided myself on my independence and had been living on my own since college. I had never considered the prospect of moving in with either his or my family, as I was determined to maintain my personal space and autonomy, especially after marriage. I was crystal clear with my husband from the very beginning about my desire to build a life separate from the intrusive daily presence of extended family members. While he had once toyed with the idea of living closer to his family, his own experiences of having no privacy growing up had driven him to embrace a more independent lifestyle, one that I fully supported. Yet, despite all my efforts to be cordial and to integrate, I couldn't shake the sense that Sandra held me responsible for his distancing, a silent grudge that seemed to underpin every interaction. As the vacation drew near, the tension reached a fever pitch. For months, I had played an active role in planning the trip, under the assumption that, as in previous years, the expenses would be graciously covered by his well-off parents. I never hesitated to contribute to the family spirit, but I also never expected to foot the bill when tradition dictated otherwise. Then, on the day before our departure, Sandra called me in for what she said was a discussion about the trip. In that meeting, with a tone that was both matter-of-fact and cutting, she informed me that I would need to pay for my own expenses. Her explanation was that this was meant to be a family vacation, a special time when her husband and she traditionally covered all costs, and that, since I was not yet considered part of the family, I was expected to handle my own expenses. She went on to explain, in no uncertain terms, that the reason I hadn't earned the label of family was because I rarely visited or spent time with them, unlike the other members who were in constant contact. Her words, delivered with cold precision and at the very last minute, struck me like a physical blow. I tried my best to hide the storm of hurt and anger boiling inside me, nodding in acceptance and agreeing to pay for myself, even though every fiber of my being rebelled at the injustice. I didn't want to let my emotions get the better of me in that moment, so I carefully told her that I understood her position and would comply. Deep down, however, I was devastated, not only by her words but by the realization that after all my efforts to become a part of their lives, I was still being excluded. I held back my tears as I left her house, determined to discuss the situation with my husband first before allowing my anger to boil over into rash actions. When he saw the hurt on my face and pressed me for details about what had transpired at his mother's home, he was furious. He was so upset by her disrespectful treatment that he threatened to cancel the vacation altogether, declaring that he no longer wished to subject me to further mistreatment by his family. In that moment, I confessed that I had long suspected Sandra's disdain, a suspicion I had once dismissed as an irrational theory, but which was now supported by her blatant exclusion and harsh words. In a candid and emotional conversation, I recounted to my husband how his mother's behavior had markedly changed after he moved in with me. I explained that the shift from lukewarm politeness to cold indifference, and even outright hostility, seemed directly linked to my presence in his life, an element that she apparently blamed for disrupting the traditional family setup. I told him how her insistence that I wasn't close enough to be considered family, because I hadn't made enough of an effort to visit frequently, cut me deeply. He admitted that, for his mother, family meant constant proximity and togetherness. He recalled how upset Sandra had been when he first announced his plans to live independently, and it became clear that her discontent had festered over time. Though this explanation did little to ease the sting of her words, it did confirm that the underlying issue was not a lack of effort on my part but a deep-seated inability on her part to accept change. Even so, canceling the vacation or merely confronting her did not seem like enough, not when the pain of her rejection was so raw and public. Determined to stand up for our dignity, my husband and I devised a plan that was as bold as it was calculated. Rather than canceling the vacation outright, we decided to follow their schedule to the letter, meeting the family at the airport as expected. However, once there, we would quietly slip away and catch an earlier flight to a destination of our choosing. This strategy was our way of sending a silent but unmistakable message. We would not allow ourselves to be treated as outsiders in a family gathering where we were never truly wanted. With our plan firmly set, the next day we arrived at the airport alongside the rest of the family. Amid the familiar buzz of chatter and anticipation, we excused ourselves under the pretense of getting a few photos taken. Seizing the opportunity while everyone was distracted by their own conversations, we swiftly made our way to the ticket counter. There, we purchased 2 tickets for the earliest flight, destined for the vibrant city of San Francisco. Although our original plan had been to travel to Miami, the prospect of exploring a new city on our own, without the suffocating presence of a disapproving family, was irresistibly appealing. As we settled into our seats on the flight, we could hear his family scrambling to reach us, calling and texting in alarm. We chose not to respond, knowing that the vastness of the airport would keep them at bay long enough for us to take off without further confrontation. Upon landing in San Francisco, the sense of liberation was immediate and intoxicating. We were finally free from the oppressive atmosphere that had shadowed us for so long. Yet, even as we began to enjoy the city's charm and each other's company, the weight of unresolved issues lingered in our minds. It wasn't long before we decided that honesty was the only way forward. In a candid group message to the entire family, my husband explained the truth. He detailed the hurtful conversation with Sandra and revealed that, since I was not yet considered a part of the family, we had decided to spend our vacation apart from them. This confession ignited a firestorm of anger among his relatives. They accused us of being irresponsible and selfish for abandoning the group at the airport, insisting that I had taken it for granted that I would be welcomed into the family without earning that status. They claimed I had never made enough of an effort, never attended their frequent dinners, never engaged with them online every day, and used that as a basis to say that I didn't deserve to be included without paying my own way. I was deeply offended by these baseless accusations. I have always prided myself on my financial independence and have never once expected someone else to cover my costs. The idea that I was being selfish by refusing to let them pay for me was both laughable and infuriating. I made it clear that my intentions had never been to leech off their generosity. Every effort I had made to connect with them, every attempt to bridge the gap, had been sincere, and yet, it seemed that no matter what I did, it would never suffice for them to truly accept me. Their expectations were not only unrealistic, but also a blatant contradiction of what a supportive family should be. I reiterated that my husband and I had always chosen to maintain a respectful distance, visiting only once every week or two, in order to preserve our much-needed privacy. It was a decision made together, not a one-sided imposition, and it was absurd to claim that this distance was a sign of neglect on my part. The conflict, which had started with Sandra's cruel remark about my place in the family, had now grown into a full-blown battle over personal boundaries and mutual respect. Every detail, from her decision to single me out just before the vacation to the subsequent fallout, spoke to a deeper issue of control and an unhealthy fixation on family unity that left no room for individuality. It pained me to realize that despite all my attempts to be warm, accommodating, and genuine, I was still being judged by standards that were never communicated to me. The timing of her revelation, the cruelty of her words, and the public nature of her rejection all combined to create a wound that was difficult to heal. My husband and I decided that, rather than allowing this insult to fester, we would let our actions speak for themselves by reclaiming our autonomy in the only way we knew how. After spending several days on our self-imposed escape in San Francisco, I'd like to update you on how things have unfolded. Update 1. We are still enjoying our vacation, relishing every moment of freedom and relief that comes with being far from his family's constant interference. However, it's become painfully apparent that his family is not taking our absence lightly. They have bombarded us with frantic calls and texts, their anger palpable as they express discontent over our decision not to live in their suffocating proximity. They seem to believe that my desire for personal space is an act of betrayal, a refusal to live under the same roof, as they think is the only acceptable way to be a family. I want to be absolutely clear, both my husband and I value our privacy and our independence, and our decision to maintain a healthy distance was made together. If they choose to be angry, then that is their burden to bear. Their attempts to insinuate that I am controlling or isolating him are not only unfounded but are also a gross misrepresentation of our joint decision for a better quality of life. After our time away in San Francisco, we returned home feeling rejuvenated and hopeful for a peaceful week ahead. Update 2, however, peace was short-lived. The moment we stepped back into our daily routine, we were confronted with the inescapable presence of his family. Without warning, I heard the persistent ring of our doorbell one evening after a long, exhausting day at work. It was unmistakably Sandra, uninvited and determined to insert herself into our lives once again. Despite our protests and a sincere plea for her to respect our space, she pushed past us and entered our living room as if she had every right to be there. I was incensed and demanded that she leave immediately, explaining that her behavior prior to the vacation was utterly unacceptable and that I had no desire to endure further humiliation or intrusion on my own property. Instead of backing down, Sandra responded by ordering me to shut up, insisting she was there solely to speak with her son. I refused to be spoken to in such a manner in my own home, and that declaration only served to inflame her further. She began shouting, accusing me of isolating her son and undermining his connection with the family, alleging that I was a homewrecker intent on robbing her of control. In a moment of uncontrolled rage, she even resorted to calling me a psycho and declared that she was there to rescue her son before it was too late. Before I knew what was happening, she lunged at me, seizing a handful of my hair and launching into a physical attack that left me reeling. My husband intervened immediately, pulling us apart and forcefully escorting her out of the house, though her barrage of vile insults continued even as she was being removed. In the immediate aftermath of that violent confrontation, my husband and I took swift action to protect ourselves. Once we had calmed down enough to think clearly, we contacted the police to report the physical assault. It was an act of desperation born out of the need to ensure that such abuse would never happen again. Although Sandra was eventually taken away by law enforcement, and, despite her tearful pleas for leniency, we pressed charges to prevent a recurrence, the emotional scars from the incident have left us both shaken. Update 3, a few days later, we secured a restraining order against Sandra, a legal measure that, while it resulted in only a community service sentence for her, since I wasn't gravely injured, has nonetheless provided us with a measure of safety and peace of mind. Unfortunately, her family has since launched a relentless campaign to twist the narrative. They claim that I intentionally provoked Sandra in order to justify her extreme reaction, accusing me of being the mastermind behind this entire debacle. These allegations are not only absurd but also deeply hurtful, as they ignore the reality of my genuine efforts to be accepted and my refusal to pay for an experience that was never meant for me in the first place. Their relentless finger-pointing and drama only serve to underscore the toxic dynamic that has long plagued this family. Looking back on all that has transpired, from the initial crushing declaration that I was not family, to our bold decision to leave them stranded at the airport, to the violent altercation at our doorstep, and finally, to the legal steps we have been forced to take, I am left with a profound mix of sorrow and resolve. This entire ordeal has been a tumultuous roller coaster of emotions, marked by exclusion, public humiliation, and physical aggression. Yet, throughout this harrowing journey, my husband and I have grown closer and more determined to live life on our own terms. We refuse to be manipulated by a family dynamic that demands conformity at the expense of individual happiness and privacy. I now see that what some might call family should never come at the cost of one's self-respect or safety. I want to thank every single one of you who has taken the time to listen to my story. Your support, your engagement, and your willingness to hear the truth mean more to me than words can express. If you found this narrative as compelling, emotional, and hard-hitting as I do, please remember to subscribe, like, and share this video. Your support not only bolsters my channel but also empowers me to continue sharing these raw, real-life experiences in the hope that they might help others who find themselves trapped in similarly toxic situations. Stay strong, hold fast to your boundaries, and never let anyone convince you that your right to privacy and independence is negotiable.